It's all about the national minimum wage, well, I said the minimum wage, yeah, proposed strike by NLC and TUC. From what they said, tomorrow, 3rd of June, is going to be a total shutdown, a complete shutdown of the country because the federal government isn't willing to play ball. The federal government and the part have been begging, pleading, saying, look, we can't go beyond 60 or 494,000 is not feasible. Now, Labour is saying something just got to give us 60K is not enough. We're giving you enough time from tomorrow, Monday, 3rd of June, we'll shut down the economy. The federal government is still begging. Questions have been asked. So many things have come up, pick upon, like thinking about it. Is it a smart move if Labour choose to go on that strike? Is it a smart move to peg it at 494,000 naira? Is it a smart move also for the federal government to peg it at 60,000 naira? Don't forget that MAN, yes, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, they've agreed to 60,000 naira. The boy is saying no, it is not enough. All these palaver put together, do you think Nigeria will function properly from tomorrow? Because Labour is still insisting on going on a strike. With me here in the studio is a legal practitioner, political affairs commentator, once a Labour devotee, always a Labour devotee. Join me to welcome Barrister Robinson Imade. Welcome to TMI. So this edition, I appreciate the comment. Despite the rain. Despite the rain. All right. 494,000 naira as minimum wage proposed by Labour and TUC. Does it make sense to you? Let's start from there.
Shakespeare said nothing is good or bad. Anybody hears that the Nigerian Labour Force is asking for 494,000 naira minimum wage will be alarmed. But such people will be those who are not resident in Nigeria today. Otherwise, to think of close to 700 at the beginning from 30,000 would have been incredible. Except that what 30,000 could do before now, I'm very sure 300,000 will not do now. And so you must put it in perspective. If you say 494,000 naira, is it realizable or is it good enough? You should ask yourself, what can 494,000 naira buy today? What can it do for the average worker? How much is, for example, fare to work, transport fare only? How much is a plate of food in a local cafeteria? How much is a bag of rice in Nigeria today? In 2015, a bag of rice, I know, because I used to buy many bags and share to my workers at Christmas, was 7,500 naira. I am aware that the last Christmas, just last December, it rose to over 90,000. It's coming down to 90,000. So when you look at the amount, you think it's foolish or unreasonable of the workers to so ask. But if you just oppose that with the economy of today and look at how worthless, you begin to see sense in the demand. I remember that the NLC came with analysis of justification of the amount initially asked for, and they have come down tremendously from that amount. You look at it and you wonder, oh, it's not even reasonable because this amount is allocating will not do these items is putting them against. But I think that Labour will still come down from 494,000, but government as of necessity must go up. Otherwise, if you say that the demand is high, look at what the politicians, the ruling class, are doing with our naira. How much was spent on buying vehicles for legislators? How much was given as a gift, if you like, to those going on private mission hajj outside the country? How much do we see that government is spending on frivolities? If you look at what government is doing today and the way money is spent, you will even ask for more than 494,000. But between you and me, I believe that 494,000 today, in spite of what government is doing, may be on the high side. Although 404,000 can really be a wage that can take anybody home. You know, at the end of the day, I want to believe that sooner than later there will be a compromise. That compromise must not be 60,000 naira. But can you imagine somebody earning a salary for after 30 days and cannot buy a bag of rice for your family? That becomes ridiculous. 60,000 is ridiculously low. 494,000 naira may not be realizable or payable by government, looking especially at the private sector. Don't forget that this negotiation has been tripartite. The government has been there, the organized private sector has been represented, and of course the unions. If you say 494,000, government can pay, but can the private sector pay?
Now that is the next question, because like what you rightly said, tripartite, they've all been represented, because man right now is saying 60,000, it's okay, and that's part of the private sector, because they know from reports that 494,000 doesn't make sense. How many private sector can pay such an amount? How many local government can pay such an amount? How many governors can pay such an amount? To run out to you.
Well, if you talk about private sector, I'll have some sympathy. But if you talk about government, whether federal, state, or local, they deal with us as though we do not have brains. I know of state governments, for example, Edo State government has offered 70,000 naira even before the negotiation began. 70,000 naira will be difficult for many states to pay, especially states that are not smart. I know, and I stand to be corrected, and I could be taken up on this, and I will defend it, that in the Edo State civil service, you do not have people more than up to 50 on levels 1 to 4. I have friends who are directors, who are permanent secretaries, who are very senior civil servants, who have to pay private people to sweep, to clean their offices. I know that they do not even have messengers. Hardly do they have drivers. As far back as 10 years ago, a friend of mine who was permanent secretary was augmenting the payment of his driver who was earning 10,000 on that Comrade Adam social money. So I'm saying that the states are smart. They can pay, especially states who have stopped employment in if you like, more than a decade. They selectively employ people. There is massive unemployment in most of the states that may say they can pay 60,000. But states that are, people-oriented, states that are, that have the feelings of people at heart, who still recruit to beat unemployment, may not be able to pay 499,000. When it becomes absolutely necessary, I'm sure those will say, if it's minimum wage, we can pay 494,000, because they know that there's paucity in workers in the civil service. My concern, like I said earlier, will be the private sector who still try to keep the engine of manufacturing running by employing people. I sympathize with them. I'm also an employer of labor, and I know it's not going to be easy for me, for example, if I fall within the stipulated scope of payment of minimum wage, to pay even 60,000. But I know that if government is serious at all levels, 60,000 naira will not be a problem at all. What the boss should be concerned with is the fact that state governments, up to 60-70% of them, stopped employing long ago. And so those ones will come to say, oh, we don't want strike in our states, we'll try and pay.
Now, despite the fact that some state governors have stopped employment, some find it difficult to pay even the 30,000 naira minimum wage. Have you not heard that some states in the federation, they can't pay, they have not paid 30,000 naira minimum wage since it's been signed into law that the minimum or the least amount of money you should give to a worker is 30,000. What do you have to say about this?
When we employ people who do not have ordinarily any business in governance, into governance, we have such problems. The states that say they cannot pay 30,000 that have refused to pay 30,000 minimum.
Listen, they don't have the funds.
Well, they don't have the funds. What's their security vote a month? Are we not saying Kogi state government, for example, was owing workers before he left many months of unpaid salaries? El Rufai, the then governor of Kaduna State, had to come to Kogi to put his 2 knees on the floor to beg for pardon and promise that Yaya Bello would do better if given a second chance. Everybody, you would have believed then that Kogi State was a poor state. But the unfolding events have shown the billions of naira, if not dollars,
Even in dollars,
that the man has stolen away. And so if a state government tells you you cannot pay 30,000, look deeply into the activities and you will see that that government is shrouded in fraud. Like Kogi State, we are seeing now, is on the run. And the man who succeeded him also have told us he will start from where the
governor stopped. Okay, ex-governor.
He even said that to the people of the state that if I give an order and the ex-governor counter say please obey the ex-governor, the man who has stolen billions of naira or dollars and is on the road just now, he has told you whether you like it or not, that man is my godfather. I will do what he has been doing. I'm also going to steal your money. So I don't expect Kogi State to say you are going to pay. But in actuality, there is no state in Nigeria today that will not have very easily paid 30,000. It is that the fact is that when they come to governance, they see it as government of themselves for their cronies and by their cronies. And to that extent, they forget about the mass of the people who voted them in.
Okay.
That is why, if you ask me, the sentiment is not about the workers. They are not interested. States that pretend to be interested do not employ the workers, don't have the workers to pay the salary. I have challenged the state government. Let us know what your wage bill monthly is. Give us stratification on the categories of people you pay this money to. I believe that there is no one person. Okay, there is no more than 50 people. Let's raise the bar. More than 50 people earning 70,000 in Edo State today. Whereas before 2015, we had a system where local government, I was a consultant to local government in Edo State, and I know that almost on a yearly basis, 1, 2, 3 times yearly, we're recruiting people into the local government. We are not seeing that anymore. We are not seeing the state government employing. What we see the state government doing now, right from the time of Adams Oshomole, is coming with a scheme that is slavish. When they say, what they call them, you just give employment to people, refer their qualifications, and pay them 10,000 naira and 20,000 naira. That is slave labor and slave oriented activities. We don't want to see any government saying, if you cannot pay, resign, let somebody that can pay, who will have the mind of the feelings of the people at heart to take over governance.
All right, now let's take a look at Delta State, Rivers State, even Lagos State to get to realize that our workforce, according to report, is far greater than that of Edo State. Can they present an amount that labor is clamoring for, saying 60,000 is not enough? That's why I said I'm going to comment, but at least the amount, compare the states that have a large number of workforce. How are they going to cope?
I'm happy you know that.
Don't you think that this will lead to retrenchment?
I'm happy you know that Lagos State, River State, and Delta State have far more workforce than Edo State. The reason is why. But again, talking about whether they can pay or not, I don't know if you realize what the internally generated revenue of Lagos State is. I don't know if you can hazard a guess as to what the internally generated revenue of River State is. Then coming to Delta State, I'm sure you know from the allocation for the Federation account what Delta State gets, being a core oil producing state, what River State gets. The way you know it is, how are the politicians themselves, the governor, the commissioners, contractors that they bring in to do jobs for them, how are they faring? What are they doing? I think that Lagos State can pay far more than 60,000 naira in spite of the if you like, bloated.
The workforce.
I am also sure that Lagos State may not be able to pay 404,000. That's why I said earlier that there must be a midway. Federal government cannot just come and bounce 60,000 naira. And among many of the practitioners in government will not give to their girlfriends for taxi fare from their office to their homes. 60,000 naira today is way too low. 404,000 naira may be above the reach of some states.
Many states, according to reports.
Some states and the organized private sector. Not even all the private. There are private sector companies that can pay far more than 60,000. But the average, like the NECA executive secretary said, that we went into a negotiation talking about minimum wage, non-living wage. That's being frank. Because the minimum wage may not be a living wage. And if the private sector agreed to double, move by 100% upwards, the minimum wage that was there, I think that's a plus, although they need to do more. As for government, I think that much more should be done. I support in its entirety the strike that will start at 12 midnight tonight, and until government decides to treat labor with respect, labor must bring down this government.
But between them, we expect they've been dealing with them to please put Nigeria first. You understand? Now, apart from that, there's this notion that, look, what you guys are doing, doing is to spell doom for Nigeria if they should embark on this track. Now, you talked about living wage and minimum wage. Does that mean that Labour is now fighting for living wage instead of fighting for minimum wage? Because of what you just said, 494,000 seems to be like a living wage, not a minimum wage. Something just got to give. Someone definitely must feel the backlash if everyone is like, I'm twisted or forced to pay the 494,000 naira as minimum wage. Well, I say come living wage. What are we really doing?
In the past, I presided over choosing between retrenchment or reduction in salary. And because the company brought out their books and we looked at it, we said, okay, if that's the case, let us step down salaries. Because our members, being I led the senior staff union, knew what was coming to the company, it was a private company, and what was going out. We knew the salaries of everybody, and many of the top notchers were my members. And so rather than retrenching my members at that time, we said, okay, let's scale down the salaries. We did that. Labor is not insensitive to the plight of the employers. Except that you have an employer in Nigeria that is reckless. An employer that wants to buy a yacht for how much? For the president to go and cruise at sea. An employer that will vote so much money into the office of first lady that does not exist in our constitution. An employer that will say, oh, you are going on Hajj, Muslims take 90 billion naira.
Is that what Labour is looking at?
Labour must look at all of this in the system.
You're looking at just one part of government, the federal government. What about the state? What about the local and the private sector?
I've just started to talk about the federal government. I've spoken about the state, the private sector. And if you want me to talk about the state, I'll talk about the states.
Please do.
What is the amount that Edo State government, I'm using Edo State because we are here in Edo State, is collecting as security vote? How has it enhanced security situation in Edo State over the years?
If you talk about security votes, is it the money to pay salaries? Is it not for securing the state?
How secure is the state?
That is another talk altogether. We are talking about the security vote and of course the minimum wage.
Yes, I'm talking about leakage. You said I should tell you how the states manage the resources that they have. Is that what you are saying? Everybody on the street, even the wheelbarrow pushers, pay in most of the states. At the end of the day, what do we get from it? We are supposed to be more than this in the studio just now. People are not able to come just because rain fell and the roads are blocked. If you go to Tom Line, the popular Tom Line area now, I'm sure it's not passable. That's why they are not here. What's the ratio of unemployment in the states? So what are they doing with, let me tell you, what we get, what Delta State gets as a 30% derivation from being an oil producing company, a state like Jigawa may not get as total allocation. What do they do with the money? The question is, both the states and the federal government are almost equally reckless as far as spending our Commonwealth is concerned.
But you mentioned a state like Jigawa that don't have much money federation account. How are they going to cope with 494,000 naira?
That's why I said that all the states can pay 60,000. Most of the states will be unable to pay 494,000, but many of the states can pay 494 if Labour insists on it. Federal government should even pay more. I'm not saying that the minimum wage must be 464,000 naira.
94,000 naira.
494,000 naira. Labour, I know, will come down, but federal government must go up. You had mentioned earlier that federal government is begging. Begging who? And how are they begging? They want to whip sentiments. Otherwise, the last meeting that was said, no government representation was there. Not even one state governor, not even the private sector, not even anybody from the federal government. If you say the Minister of Labour was there, the Minister of Labour was there as a conciliator, as a non-partisan person. And so if government worked out on negotiation and Labour feels slighted and knows that if they accept what government has proposed, the members may probably throw stones at them and they want to go on strike, why not? Is it time to begin to beg when you shun negotiation at the peak of it?
But still, they came back and said, look, this is what we have for you guys on the table, 60,000 naira.
We are no longer accepting the paternalistic system of negotiations that the federal government has practiced over the years. You don't just come, it's like your son comes to you and say, guy, I need A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And it's amount to 90. They say, look, all I have for you is 50,000. As a father, can push that through. But look, in Nigeria today and all over the world, the practice of trade unionism is such that labor must not be afraid to negotiate, and they must not fear to negotiate. So when you come to a negotiation table, the first thing that is set is that, look, at this table we are all equals. Let us discuss as equal partners. If that one is not agreed upon, no negotiation begins. And when it begins, and you begin to say, because you are representing government, the much we have for you is 60,000, take it or leave it. We call the bluff.
No, don't forget, they started with 48,000.
Yes.
They started going up to 60. So they're not saying that they're forcing you to take this is what we have, this is what you can start up with, this is what you can chest for now, take it.
You want us to accept that? They started with 48,000 from 30,000. It's a wide margin if you look at the negotiations of the past. But what is our inflation rate in Nigeria today? How has things gone up? What do they expect workers to do? Straight to the office, stay in the office because you cannot walk home, you are tired. Stay from Monday till Friday, perhaps on the same clothing, sleep behind the office because they will be locked, work for government, eat once a day, send your children out of school, and so on and so forth. Don't forget that another thing Labour is asking for is the fact that electricity tariff arbitrarily increased must be brought down to 65 naira per kilowatt.
Per kilowatt.
Is that not even too much to begin with? You are not paying good salaries. You are taxing the people all round. Recently, it was to be taxed on for security, cyber security. Every aspect of our life is taxed, and yet there is no money that people can take at least a good meal a day from. 60,000, I tell you, if accepted, cannot give any family in Nigeria today one good meal a day. Assuming you are not paying transport to work, assuming you are not paying children's school fees, assuming you are not paying house rent, assuming all that your 60,000 will give you will be food, feeding, I can assure you that it will not give anybody in Nigeria today one meal a day. And so why would government, if they were not insensitive to the plight of the people, come to say what we can afford, what you can afford? In the first instance, how do you live your own life? What have you budgeted for your wife whose name is in our constitution? What do you take home? What do the legislators at the national and even state levels end. So we all must become politicians to be able to eke out a good living. That will not happen. And so those working must also fight for their right. It's the right of workers to seize their labor, their services. You can't take that from them. Even when you go to get a house help in Nigeria, you negotiate with people. I'll pay this. No, you cannot. You must send them to school. You must do this, that, the other. These are people who are working for you, working for government, not because you are better than them, but because they chart a different course for themselves. If you chose to be a politician and I chose to be a legal practitioner, it doesn't make you better than me. But you want to earn 1 million times over me, even when I have better qualifications than you. That's what is happening in Nigeria today. By the time they find themselves in the corridors of power, they believe that they can now play God, and everybody must accept whatever they say. And that's why government can now come to Nigeria, to Nigerian workers in 2024 to say that, oh, what we can pay is 60,000 naira. What nonsense.
Wow, wow, you are really speaking fire as if you are just there in the mind of Ajero and Osifo, but the finish just this. They are saying, economically speaking, the country is not doing well. You know already the disparity between naira and dollar. You know also what we are going through, talking about subsidy being removed. You know also about the various challenges facing us as a country. Putting these factors on the table, don't you think that labor is going beyond board?
If you look at these factors, these factors you are highlighted, the labor should not go beyond below 494,000. Because what is the cause of the devaluation of the naira, the floating of the naira, the removal of oil subsidy, or fuel subsidy, the removal of all the things that we used to enjoy together as Nigerians? Who removed them? Who caused them? The federal government, of course, or the government, of course. If that is the case, it's either you are saying that they are deliberately wanting to punish Nigerians, or that they are not sensitive to the plight of Nigerians. And so, if you want me to look at these indices, labor should not go down on 494,000. But we may forgive them, because I personally believe that many of them in government do not know what they're doing. All right? Somewhere in the scripture you will say, Father, forgive them, for they know what they're doing. So me, I will forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. And so I will appeal to labor to come down a little from the 494. But if we look at those things you put on the table, then we should not go.
But this is a commitment of the federal government. If we should go with what labor is saying, two things might happen, like we pointed out. In fact, just one thing can happen: retrenchment. For them to be able to carry the burden of service in the workforce. Of course, governors will not spare, because for them to pay these, they have to share. Private sector also will not spare. For them to share this, they have to share weight. So how can labor go to sleep knowing fully well that if they insist on this amount, this might just be the outcome?
The outcome is not sacrosanct. It's not as you look at it. Even retrenchment must be a product of negotiation. You want to retrench because you cannot pay what labor wants? Fine. Labor will say, put your cards on the table. Let us see why you are retrenching. What is going on in your own cabinet, in your own administration? And so it will be discussed. And at the end of the day, government may not be boxing itself into a very tight corner.
Don't forget, you're talking about the federal government. What about the private sector? The local government, how are they going to cope?
I'm talking about government now.
Okay.
I'll come down
to the private sector.
Government, whether local, whether state or federal, is government. All right? And if the local government feels it is shortchanged, it should cry out. It's part and parcel of government. The state government will not even retrench. In Edo State, who will you retrench? Do we have workers? In many of the states, who will you retrench? Do you have workers? Retrenchment has gotten to its lowest in many of the states. And so the threat of we will retrench, let's see. Retrench your commissioners and their aides. How many people do we have in the civil service of many of these states? How many people do we have? We are talking about retrenchment when states are now saying, oh, because they do not want to employ and because they do not want to pay pensions and gratuity, they are deceiving the gullible workforce by saying, oh, this state government loves you. Continue to work. beyond 60 years to 65. So you'll be feeding your graduate children at home because we will employ them. So you'll be feeding your extended family because they have no employment. Only because they want to dodge, they want to push forward the payment of gratuity and pensions. What is, for example, the life expectancy in Nigeria today for men? That you come out on May Day to say, oh, because we love you, we want you now to retire at 65. And we will clap. Because at that moment, we believe that we are being done a favor. Whereas back home, we have 3-4 graduates who have no jobs, who ought to replace us in the workforce. And because government knows that if these people, this chunk of people leave now, how are we going to pay the lump sum in gratuity? And they say, let us tell them to stay more. The tenure is 4 years. We extend by 5 years. Adam Shemole did it. The present governor has done it. It's happening all over the country. Whereas in some climes, retirement age is 55. You retire, continue to get your pension, and enjoy your life. But now they want you to work until the last day of your life.
But that might not be what they have at the back of their mind.
What do you think they have at the back of their mind?
I mean, you're right. That's talking about you just being there, haven't been able to, like, do some work, can't cater for your family.
For your family, I just said now that a man who is 60 ought to have most of his children, not all of them, as graduates.
As graduates.
They are home, no job, no employment. And you say, oh, old man, continue. If you are 60, you are a senior citizen in Nigeria, and they don't want to make you 65. Because they are afraid of employing people, and you want me to be scared that they will retrench. Retrench who? That's on the part of government, whether local, state,
or federal.
The private sector, I told you, have my sympathy. Because then, honestly, you work for every kobo you earn. And the management is always alert. How are we going to get it? When it's getting to the end of the month, I put aside whatever pleasure that I ordinarily would have with my family. Because the salary of workers is
must be paid, yeah.
That's the way it is in the private sector. Okay, not government. And before now, I don't know what minimum wage, what year minimum wage was that. That of government was higher than that of the private sector. We could accept that today. Because look at it, any private sector company that is afloat today, we should applaud. Many have closed down because of the insensitive governmental policies. And when you talk about government cannot pay because there's inflation, this will cost such things, the government. So, but I believe that private sector paying 60,000 is good. They can do more. Government saying they cannot pay 60,000 naira is an insult to our sensibilities. I will advocate, if you like, an upward review, a slight upward review for the private sector, but no government, federal, state, or local, should tell me or anybody, unless you want to insult our sensibilities, that 200,000 naira is the maximum you can pay today.
200,000 should be the benchmark.
I also think
they are struggling with 60 or say 200K. We don't listen to the idea of paying 200,000 as minimum wage for the government, not talking about the private sector.
For how much do you fare your car to work in a month? Even if you are living 5 kilometers away from your office, how much is a liter of petrol today? How much was it when this government took over? I hear that only yesterday that a cup of rice, and I have a friend, honestly, I have a friend who eats at least 3 cups of rice when he wants to eat rice. He said you just cook it, put it in the pot, put stew, and
just eat it.
And a cup is 500 naira a land, local rice. Do you remember how much the last administration under the same party pumped into agriculture, into rice, local rice production? And they said they were going to have, they even showed us a pyramid, whether it was computer manipulated or not, of rice. At the end of the day, after the pyramid, how much is the local bag of rice now? The imported used to be 7,500, local is now 80,000. 80, not 80. So what are we talking about? I have no sympathy with government at all. I could have sympathy for the private sector because they are really the major employers of labor today. Government at the state level, even at the federal level, have stopped employment a long time ago. Let's not deceive ourselves. So when you talk about minimum wage, those illiterate governors, with due respect, who will think that minimum wage is just for level 1, step 1, and not do what they call relativity to spin it up to level 17, will jump at any amount as minimum wage because nobody will pay it.
All right. Barrister Robinson, to call it a wrap on this show, on this segment rather, not the show, on the segment, would it be a smart move for labor to commence strike tomorrow?
No move.
As it stands right now.
No move will be smarter than that. If labor does not commence strike at 12 midnight tonight, then you can be sure that the labor has lost it. The government of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a man I've known over the years, will not take them serious anymore. But the only thing that will save the face of labor is to embark on total strike. And I know, I like what labor has been doing. Pegasan, Nupen, Nue, National Union of Electricity Workers, they have all sensitized their workers that from 12 midnight tonight, not only will you not be able to buy fuel, you will also not be able to have power. The few areas that always have power, and of course, movement will be restricted. Not that labor will go out there to stop you from moving, but it will be impossible to move because even buses will not be able to fuel their vehicles to convey people from place to place.
And what if there are emergencies? What then happens?
I advise everybody for himself, go for us all. I advise that.
For real?
Yes, I advise that we stock our homes with foodstuff and other necessities. If there is necessity, that is why between today and this and between now and 12 midnight, people should go and fuel their cars. I'm sure that there's what we call essential workers. Those will be at work, the medical personnel and the others. We'll be able to carry our wives in labor to the hospital and the likes. Don't move just as you would have moved if we didn't have this strike looming. I think labor must, of necessity, embark on strike tonight. Otherwise, they would have lost it. If they don't embark on strike tonight, I'm sure this government will come when they come back to give the we have reviewed it. We cannot pay 60. I said 55 or leave it.
Now you know they can't do that. You know they want to do it.
I know they can do it. The only way they can move 60,000 naira upwards is for a total strike to begin tonight, and it must be one that should last for at least 48 hours before Labour will answer federal government. Otherwise, they will lose it.
48 hours.
At least.
Shut down.
At least. There must be complete shutdown for at least 48 hours.
But people may lose their life because of this strike. Don't Labour care about it?
How do people lose life because of strike? If you say
you said total shutdown. You said what is an emergency? Someone need to move to the hospital. How's it going to happen?
On essential duties, those ones ought to be at work. Because whether you are seeing the labor activists, the labor union leaders as celestial beings, they are also human beings. They have wives and children, and so the emergency will also happen to them. That is why when you call it strike, you now make provision for those on essential duties. Core essential duties. Core essential duties will be at work. Otherwise, nobody. And the practice is, I hope Labour has not forgotten, don't do your work and don't allow anybody to do your work. You know? Don't do your work and don't allow anybody to do your work. Yes. So they may want to, okay, for example, I think federal government has beaten that. Was it Abacha who said when Pegasan went on strike and the country almost collapsed? That was why they brought these mega stations. Yes, those ones will be at their essential duties. But rather than going to queue, there is only one. People don't know mega station in every state. All those other ones have what they call franchise. Not actually mega station. The only one in Edo State is on Sapele Road. And if you want to go by there, be ready to be 600 and something position on the queue. Wow. It's not worth it. Buy what you want to buy, stock your homes, and restrict your movements for the period in the interest of not just the labor leaders, but yourself and your family and generations on board.
All right, so what advice do you have for the federal government, state government, local government, private sector, even labor?
Well, I'll start with labor. Labor must please come down a little from the what is
494.
saying as Olympian high 494,000 naira. Federal government must go up tremendously, and the private sector should not just be following the federal government, discuss with labor on what is possible. I don't see why government should not pay higher than the private sector. Because whether you like it or not, most of the companies all over the country, even companies of expatriates are closing up. I would encourage we frustrating those that are managing to keep afloat. But federal government must know that offering 60,000 naira is insulting to the integrity and sensibilities of workers. It means that they are not seeing the plight of the common man today. So they must go up.
They must go up. Labor must come down. Federal government must go up to meet that particular point.
Labor must come down a little. Federal government must go up to meet the demand of labor.
Well, you've heard of a labor devotee. He is speaking from labor perspective. Once a labor devotee, always a labor devotee. Let's see how this will pan out. Would there be an emergency meeting tonight? We'll be able to reach an agreement before 12 o'clock midnight. That's the warning of labor. After that, total shutdown of the economy. You don't want that. We don't want that. But come on, the workers' welfare definitely must be attended to. But 494,000 versus 60,000, how are they going to meet at that particular stable point where everybody will be like, yes, we agreed to this. We're watching and ask us to report back to you.